So good morning and hello to those who are joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who attended Thursday's session. My name's Bridget Vercoe and I'm the Principal Resilience Advisor with Auckland Emergency Management. Auckland Emergency Management is a part of Auckland Council, and we work in partnership with emergency services, other organisations, communities and businesses to ensure Auckland is able to respond to and recover from emergencies. A key part of our work is supporting small business owners like yourselves managing the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 and get on the road to recovery faster. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Tracy Hatton. For those who are joining us for the first time, Tracy is a Joint Managing Director at Resilient Organisations. She has spent the last 8 years working with small business owners like yourself to make them better able to get through disruption. Much of her experience has come from working with small business owners following the Christchurch and Kaikoura earthquakes. But before I hand over to Tracy, just a few housekeeping bits and pieces. Firstly, we'll be running a question and answer session at the end. So please feel free to ask a question, just type it into the Q&A window and type in your question and Tracy will answer. And don't worry if you miss anything, because a recorded set version will be emailed to you shortly. It will also be available on our website, aucklandemergencymanagement.org.nz. So without further delay, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Tracy.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Bridget. It's great to be able to speak with you today. So this is all about navigating your business through a crisis. It's the second in a series of 2 webinars. Webinar 1, which you can access a recording of, looked at looking after yourself first so that you can look after your business, taking stock of your situation, keeping on communicating with everybody your business interacts with, and thinking about how you can work together with other businesses or other groups in your area to help mutually get you all through this event. Today, we're going to look at options for your future operation, managing the continuing uncertainty and being prepared for whatever comes next. So what does the future hold? And what we have in front of us perhaps reflects the last few months, but we don't know what is going to come next. Unfortunately, I know that my crystal ball certainly went on the blink this year. So we can look at all the forecasts, and here's just an example of one forecast for the economy coming up. We can stay best informed as we can about the COVID situation, but we will not know with any certainty what comes next. So when we're making plans for our businesses about what to do next, we have to bear in mind all of that uncertainty, that we don't know what will come next. And that's pretty tricky to do, but we're going to take you through a bit of a process to think about how that might work. One of the key messages here is not to get locked into assumptions about what the future looks like. This is just one economic forecast. The New Zealand economy has so far surpassed many economists' predictions as to the pain that COVID has caused. Back when we got out of our first big level 4 lockdown, we thought, yep, that's it, we're done. And then it came back again. It may come back again. So we've got to bear all of that in mind and make plans that will mean that our businesses can survive and thrive no matter which of those futures turns out to be reality. So in any future, no matter what it holds for us, there's a really simple recipe for making sure that our businesses and our organisations can continue to at least survive and hopefully to do a little bit better than that. This simple recipe for business continuity is your ability to operate. So that was what was impacted particularly by our lockdown restrictions, and also the level of demand. This recipe applies to any impact that might disrupt your business, but which of these comes to the fore may depend a little on the event. There's many events that won't impact your ability to operate. Most all events will impact on the demand for what it is that you do for people or for businesses. So we're going to step through a really simple way to reflect on the current state of your business, on what and help you think about what adaptation you might need to take for our current and our next environments. We're going to start with the demand side of that recipe. So right now, post-COVID, there's a lot of struggle out there, and no easy fix to that. One of the key places to start is on thinking about some of these issues. And the step one there is, do people still want your products or your services? If the answer is yes, great. And then do they want enough of it? If they want enough of it, there's still unchanged demand, that's great. You can move on to thinking about your ability to supply those customers, and that may be dependent upon the COVID level restrictions. There's a few businesses I know in this space at the moment where the recessionary impacts, the uneven sectoral impacts, mean, of course, that people don't still want the product or service that they're offering. And obviously, one of the key areas here is those catering to international tourism, but many other sectors that are impacted in this regard as well. So if that's a no, well, okay, that's great. That's not great, but you can sit down and you can start to think through, what do we do about that? So first thinking is, can I help them to want it or more of it? Are there efforts that I can actually make to rejig demand? If people have stopped going out and buying coffee, for example, they're making it at home instead, what can I do to help them to come back and want that external coffee? Okay, so if the answer is yes, that's great. If you can put steps in place, via some kind of campaign or promotion or communication to help them to want more of it, you back up on yes, you can think about your ability to supply. If you can't help people to want more of it, no. Then you move on to thinking, can I offer them something they want? And this is where you will have heard probably a lot about the idea of pivoting your business. We've got the stories of, for example, of backpackers hostel that have converted into escape rooms in time for the school holidays. So trying to find a new way that they can utilize all of their assets to tap into a new market. Okay, then if I can offer them something that they want, awesome, you move over to the supply side. If you can't, excuse me, this is where you have to pause for thought about what is the short to medium term future for my business, and do I need to actually put that into hibernation potentially? We talked in the webinar 1 about making that decision as a way to preserve capital, recognizing that this is the circumstances you face, and that continuing to in any way burn through cash isn't actually going to help you if you can't see a way to be recouping that cash in the near term future, that there may be a planned and managed process of shutting things down that does preserve sufficient capital that you can open back up again when these demand forces do work for your organisation. On the supply side, can I open? So obviously, if we have a major storm, if we have a major earthquake, volcanic eruption, floods, any of those other normal hazards that are still out there, this is where this side of the equation starts to come in. Can I open? And of course, our new levels of restrictions to reduce the spread of COVID. So it's not as clear cut as a yes, no. Yes in an existing form, yes in a different form, which obviously may be your online or your takeaway only. Yes in a hybrid form, some combination of the both. So of course, a lot of people who have started online offerings have kept that up, as well as the bricks and mortar, or no. If we're on any of those yeses, there's still a pause for thought. It's not an automatic, yep, let's open our doors. You have to think about what the cost of opening is. Now, back in the days when we had the wage subsidy, for example, the extra cost of opening your door was very minimal because the government was really helping with those salaries. But now that we're past that level of support, if opening your doors means it's that you're paying money out, you have to think very hard about whether there is enough demand to justify it. Otherwise, again, you burn through cash even quicker. Keeping your doors closed is not necessarily a failure. Keeping your doors closed may be the most resilient decision to make, depending upon the circumstances that you're facing. So we think about how much does it change the operating costs? A little bit, a lot, not at all. No change, obviously, it's a bit of a no-brainer there. Open the doors. If it is costing you more to be open than closed, then you have to think about, is it viable? And can you pass on increased costs to customers? Can you absorb them and still be a sustainable business? Now, if you're a one person outfit and with a fixed lease, it isn't going to cost you necessarily anymore. Or you may think like that, but there is an opportunity cost because your presence in your business is a cost, even if you're not currently paying yourself because of the strange circumstances. But you have to toss it up against, you could potentially go and get other employment elsewhere. So there is still a cost to it. Oops, went too far. Let's just go back one. Okay. If you're on the, still back on that red, can I open? No. Then you have to sit down, obviously, and look at some of the stuff we talked about in webinar 1 in terms of your cash flow and your assets and make decisions about what the future holds for your business. If you work through that kind of a wee bit of just a structured process to think about what the state of your business is, then we have to think about what might the future hold and stress test your decisions against the possible futures. So perhaps you've decided, yes, we're okay to stay open. Our demand is fine. It's not costing us any great big more to operate. It pays to start to think now about, okay, what would happen if we do change COVID restrictions? Or what would happen if some other event came away? Would my decisions still be valid? Do I need to mentally flag that different ones would be called for at that point? If you decide to adapt to try and serve new markets, then you have to think, in which futures will that still work for me? So for example, if eventually we do have international tourism back, have I retained enough of the core of my business to then pivot back to where I want to be, or are we going to stay in a new market? So you have to start thinking ahead about what some key levers may be for your industry and your business. So obviously for tourism, the border closure is a key lever. For hospitality, a key lever may be the depth and impact of the recession in terms of people discretionary spending. And think about perhaps two extremes of those levers and consider what that would mean for your business. So that you don't get locked into, right, this is the decision we've made and this is what we're doing. You bear in mind that those decisions may need to change in the future. And start to think about what the trigger points for those changes would be. So for those who hit the nose in the flow charts, what are the trigger points? And that might sit in your cash flow forecast about when the trigger is to need to take serious action, or it might sit on what is demand doing for your business. It will be different for all of you, but keep thinking about what might the future hold and what would it look like for my business? Is there things I should do now that would better position me for any possible future? Maybe you'd held off setting up an online presence and got through to the stage going, yep, with you, we're okay. But hold on, what if COVID does come back? So would it still be a good thing to do? Don't assume that future just holds level 1 for us. Okay. So unfortunately, in our pandemic world, there's also a lot of other things that could be still coming and happening to our businesses. And one of the problems when we have two things come along at once is there tends to be a bit of a compounding effect. You will have already sort of heard in the media about it's the businesses that were already struggling are the ones that have already shut their doors. Well, you don't want to, you may be struggling a little because of COVID, but you don't want the next flood or storm or illness of a staff member to be the trigger that makes you shut your doors. So being prepared is about thinking about what all of the risks to our businesses are. For small businesses, these top two things on our slide here, what if you get ill and what if a staff member becomes ill, are really crucial in our current world. You need to have a plan. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you need a spare key, for example. If you're a one-person operator, you need someone else to be able to access your premises. You need someone else to be able to access important documents. You have something called a black book or an emergency book, which is password protected, but is that sort of information that someone else might need to be able to keep your business running. You need to think about the capabilities of any of your staff or your team or your family Do they have the key knowledge that would be needed to keep a business going? You also need to think about what if we have a storm? What if we lose the power or the internet? And of course, there's a whole lot more in the what ifs of things that cause a risk to your business. So Auckland Emergency Management have launched a new small and medium enterprise friendly website. So no jargon, no great big complicated stuff, just really straightforward and simple advice that you can follow to make sure that your business is prepared for whatever comes next. There's a few parts to it. An emergency plan is step one. It's actually a health and safety requirement that you have one of these, how you evacuate your premises. Now, if there's only 2 or 3 of you, you may think that that's obvious, but you at least need to have had a conversation about it. It may not be as obvious as you think to all of your team. First aid kits, emergency contact details, and emergency supplies. They're really, really basic, simple stuff. But all of your team need to be involved in creating that, or at least knowing what those procedures are. The next part is a business continuity plan. Starting to think now about how can we keep critical business functions going if they're disrupted. The process of thinking through this enables you to take actions now that will preserve the assets of your business. For example, one of the most very basic things is ensuring that your IT and systems are backed up, including things like creditors and debtors records that can be very hard to piece back together again if you lose those. If they're not in the cloud, then you need to be doing just the good old manual copying of those onto a memory stick. Now, for those of you who are quite small and are running off your own laptop, that still is just as crucial. Laptops are very vulnerable to these things. So you definitely do want to be making sure that they're kept safe. It doesn't take a major storm to take out your computer. So business continuity planning doesn't have to be terribly complicated. And you'll see a screenshot here of the Auckland Emergency Management worksheets that you can work through fairly quickly to be able to make sure that you are prepared and planned for whatever risks your business might face. The last part to being prepared is connections. It's the people you know who often can get you out of a jam. So who can you build networks with that you might be able to work with in a crisis? Join your local business improvement district, your industry organisation, get to know your neighbours, even get to know some of your competitors. Right now, more than ever, we need to be sharing our stories and our issues and problems with each other. It's through those discussions often that some really cool and innovative solutions to the problems that many businesses are facing can be arrived at. And all of those relationships give you an awful lot of goodwill in the long term if something is to go wrong, either to your business or in your region. Getting through things like COVID is all about both adapting to the situation as it faces us, but also doing that little bit of planning ahead of time to make sure that someone can access our premises and do our job if we get sick, to make sure that we have got things like our IT backed up. So if so far to date you've been relying very much on that bottom axis there of adaptive and rolling with what's happening to you, it's a good time to start to think about those planned aspects of building your business resilience as well. Okay, we're in this for the long haul. The flow and impacts from COVID are not going away anytime soon. I've got just some simple do's and don'ts to help get you through that long haul of recovery. Keep doing what keeps you well. You can't look after your business unless you look after yourself first. Working 70 or 80-hour weeks is not the solution to ensuring that your business survives and thrives. Going for some walks in the park or reading a book or doing what keeps you well and healthy is needed to give you the mental space to innovate and create and keep your business going. That links to the second one, which is to make sure that you do spend time on the big picture, not just in the detail in your business for 60 hours a week, but that you're stepping back, thinking about those things like the demand issues and challenges facing your organisation, or the supply challenges facing your organisation, and thinking about what to do about those. Keep reviewing and keep adapting your plans. Don't get locked onto any one vision of the future. Keep communicating with staff, suppliers, landlords, insurers, banks, with everybody. Don't stop. If you're starting to hit harder times than you've had previously, get started on a really regular flow of communication. Reach out for help, even if that is just having a chat with someone else about the issues that you're facing. Those conversations might be the source of some ideas or some innovation to help your business. Keep looking for opportunities to work with others for your mutual benefit. Keep updating and reviewing your cash flow forecast, especially if this goes on for the very long haul and those demand pressures start to really tell on your business. And of course, keep safe. There's lots of additional information out there on the internet at the moment. Auckland Emergency Management for that being prepared. AT'd, a whole lot of useful resources such as a cash flow spreadsheet worksheet that you can work through. And of course, a whole lot on business.gov.nz. And all these links will be on the slides that are shared with you afterwards. Thanks very much for being here. Let's all be strong, be brave, be stout of heart. Continue to paddle our waka as one.